Scott Fitzgerald, leading Charlotte's conversation.
So maybe we're out of the woods. Oh, well, maybe we're not out of the woods as far as the HB2 situation goes. Maybe we're in the underbrush that's right at the very edge of the woods, and we know that there's some light out there, but how do we get there? How do we change the situation and maybe perhaps start to put a positive spin on the state of North Carolina and what we have been through over this past year? So I wanted to get some help with this, and that is why I have asked Chrysta Castañeda to join us today with Canterbury Communications. And you're a legal and crisis communication expert. Has anybody in the Trump administration called you yet?
I've spoken a lot on the Trump administration, but they have not called me directly.
Okay. Yeah, Michael Flynn might be needing you here sometime soon as he gets ready to do some talking. So the state of North Carolina, we've been under the microscope for the past year because of the very controversial HB2, which had the rest of the country kind of looking at us going, wait a minute, are these backwoods people or what? So we've repealed that to a certain extent. Now's the time to send out a message. And I guess in your industry and in your business, when you sound out a message, do you need to sort of consider who all's going to be hearing it and listening to it? You know, because there's a lot of stakeholders and then there's the media and that sort of thing. So how would you put together a message for North Carolina?
Excellent question. First thing is identify who the stakeholders are. I think you've probably got a pretty good idea of who is interested in which topics. And honestly, your stakeholders don't all have the same agenda. So that's challenge number one. But a stakeholder map is the first priority. The second thing is, what is the message? What are you trying to convey? Are you trying to convey that, we are business friendly? Are you trying to convey that, we can compromise politically to the best ends of the state? Those are the questions somebody who's running this project would have to answer. Third thing is speed and tactics in rolling out this message. It's not going to be much good, 3 weeks from now. It pretty much needed to happen yesterday. So those are the high-level things that I would consider.
Oh, so you don't have any deadlines to deal with your clients, do you? Gee whiz. I mean,
it's always a have it done yesterday kind of thing when you do crisis communications.
Okay. Well, would you consider this, from your point of view, what just happened and the repeal of this, would you consider this a crisis? And how do you define a crisis?
Well, a crisis is something that brings negative attention or possibly will bring negative attention on the organization and is happening rapidly.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, and so in that sense, it has some of the marks of a crisis, but on the other hand, this has been going on in North Carolina for a couple of years, so the messages have already been set. It's a little harder to get ahead of this particular issue as you might in another type of crisis where it's just evolving.
Okay, well, maybe the crisis that is on a lot of people's minds has to do with sports. The NCAA said that yesterday was their deadline. 12 noon was their deadline for North Carolina to make a decision, to make a change, so that we could be considered for future sporting events. So what kind of message would you suggest that the state gives to the sporting world?
Well, that we heard you. You're important to our industry. We have done our best and have the best political solution that is possible, and we hope that you will be coming to North Carolina. Let us know when you'll be calling.
Is this like a mea culpa? I mean, it almost sounds like the husband who cheated on the wife comes back and says, honey, I'm sorry. It'll never happen again. See, I'm a good guy. I mean, there's almost this like, look at me, see. Do you know what I mean? That seems like what North Carolina might be doing to the NCAA along those lines.
Well, I mean, apology is an important part of crisis communications if an apology is owed. Now, I'm not offering the professional opinion that that's what's at issue here because I'm not in North Carolina or in Dallas, but we are facing similar issues here in Texas. But yes, you're exactly right. A mea culpa can be an effective way of mitigating a crisis.
But I think that also when you do a mea culpa, there'd be a lot of people who say, we don't need to apologize for anything that we did. So how do you handle those kind of stakeholders?
Well, you have to prepare for that negative backwash, and there will be some because this is a political issue. You need to understand where they're coming from and have the best message you can to address their concerns. It's not always possible to make everybody happy.
No, you're right. You can't make everybody happy, and but you can fool them sometimes. I get those sayings confused. P.T. Barnum says you can't fool everybody that's happy. No, that's not the right one either. So Texas is going through something fairly similar to what we have. Do you have legislation that's the same, or is it being considered?
Well, legislation is pending that would enact basically the North Carolina rule. There's speculation as to whether that can pass both segments of our legislature, but we do have that pending, and we're facing that issue right now. And you know, North Carolina's experience, I think, is informing some of the politicians.
So let's say they pass it, and they call you and say, we need to get our message out. Any sort of suggestions that you would have for them that maybe you would have given to us a year ago?
This is a hard issue because the people who are most interested in it, as you mentioned, are religious conservatives and anti-regulation, anti-government types. That's my impression of it. And they're already going to be happy with the result. And most other segments, those who are for individual rights, those who are for business, are going to be unhappy with it. I think in the case that it passes, the state would need to make sure that it had some messages that appeased those people.
Gotcha. What else should we consider with this? And because I know you're on a time limit here, I don't want to take too much of your time. You are an attorney, so that that's 350 plus an hour, and I don't want to take advantage of your generosity. Anybody who's, let me just leave your audience with this idea. Anybody who feels like they may be facing a need for crisis communications, if you spot that in your horizon, whether you're a business, whether you're an organization, start to engage with it sooner rather than later. Once the information's already out, you've already lost your opportunity to make your best impression on your listeners, on your stakeholders. Okay, so you need to be able to look over the horizon a bit there.
Yes.
Chrysta Castañeda, Canterbury Communications, and the website is Canterbury, Canterbury Communications. In case anybody's getting ready to go through a crisis, they'll know where to find you.
Thank you.
All righty. Chrysta, thanks so much for your time. That is interesting. Insight from somebody who does this on a daily basis.